Well, hello there, lovely and loyal patrons. It's your good buddy, Uncle Ben. I could gush on and on about how awesome you guys are, but we've got more important business at hand. Because we've got to learn how to bring some melody and some musical application into my half hour of alternate picking power, ultimate picking workout. Those of you guys who have already watched the original half hour of power video will recall that it is 6 different exercises that take place over 30 minutes. It starts off with 6 notes per string, beginning with a downstroke. It's followed by 6 notes per string, starting with an upstroke. Then we go to 4 on a string, starting with a downstroke, 4 on a string, starting with an upstroke, and then finally it rounds off with 2 notes per string, starting down, 2 notes per string, starting up. The chromatic exercises I showed in the original video are great because they're so unmusical that you can really just concentrate on what's going on with your picking hand. But as I always say, why not get 2 birds stoned at once and make yourself a better picker while also practicing phrases that you're also going to be using in a musical context. So that's why on today's lesson I'm going to show you guys the alternate ways that I like to practice all 6 of those exercises, the 6 per string, 4 per string, and 2 per string patterns, only utilizing some more usable scales and melodic patterns. These are great coordination practice for your left hand, and they're also things that you can easily slip into some solos for some really sick sounding licks. Let me know how my tone sounds today. By the way, I'm running something completely different. I'm not using the fractal today. I've actually got my EVH 50 watt head plugged up across the room over here and mic'd up with just a Shure SM. I've got the Highwind Direwolf overdrive in front of the amp, which I think is the only overdrive I've ever liked with the EVH. And in the effects loop, I got an ISP noise decimator and the Dunable Eidolon, which is providing the delay and reverb on here. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in and talk about the first 2 sections of the workout, which are the 6 note per string stuff. Some of you guys might have watched a video on my channel a couple weeks ago called 666s, where I showed you guys some of my favorite 6-based ways to play 3 note per string scales. 2 of the ways that I outlined in that video are perfect to practice your 6 note per string stuff, starting with a downstroke for the first module and starting with an upstroke for the second module. Let's take a 3 note per string scale, like let's say this A major scale, okay? 5, 7, 9 on 2 strings, 6, 7, 9 on 2 strings, and then 7, 9, 10 on the top 2 strings. So 3 note per string, A major scale, or A Ionian mode if you're a fancy pants. Now the easiest way to turn this into a 6 note per string phrase is to simply play up each string twice, like this. And then to descend, I'll play the same idea, only going from the high note to the low note on each string, like this. That's a really usable phrase that you've heard guys like Paul Gilbert and John Petrucci and other, mega shredders use in their solos. So I think that's a pretty good one to practice. You could also apply that same logic to any other 3 note per string scale pattern that you know. So if you know maybe an A minor scale, you could change it up and do that. Just make sure if you use that kind of 6s in module 1 that you start with a downstroke. And if you're using that in module 2, be sure to start with an upstroke. One of my other favorite ways is what I call alt 6s or alternate 6s, where we start off with the lowest note on the string, jump up to the highest note on the string, then we walk down, then we walk up. So low, high, walk, down, walk, up. That's turned 3 notes into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can just run that string by string, and that'll give you a good 6 note per string phrase to practice on. Descending, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to go high, low, walk up, walk down on every string, like this. And one more really great way that you can practice a 6 note per string idea is to actually play around with some 4 note per string scales. Okay, so like let's say that I was playing that A minor scale, right? A minor is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, just the natural notes, all organic, no additives, just the regular musical alphabet. So you can arrange those notes going across the strings in a 4 note per string fashion, like this. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And you can creep up those 4 notes per string 3 at a time for a total of 6 notes. Again, be sure to check the tabs on the Patreon post and you'll see this tabbed out on there if you want to follow along. This is going to go A, B, C, and then jump up a position with your first finger so you can play B, C, D. A, B, C, B, C, D. Okay? So instead of playing all 4 straight, it's kind of like we walked up 3 and then back 1, you know? Next string would go E, F, G, F, G, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, A, G, A, B, C, D, E, D, E, F, G, A, B, A, B, C. Again, that's a cool one you can slip into a solo and just haul ass across like 4 octaves if you got really good at using that 6-based pattern. Whichever type of 6s you choose to use, whether it's straight 6s, alt 6s, or these 4 note per string 6s, just be sure that if you're practicing these in module number 1 of the half hour of power, that you're always starting on a downstroke, and that if you're in module number 2, you'll be starting with an upstroke. That way you can work on those downstroke changes. If you want to bring some musicality into sections 3 and 4 of the half hour of alternate picking power, we're going to need some cool ways to work some melodic ideas in sets of 4 notes per string into some of our favorite scale patterns. An obvious one that picks up right on top of what I was just talking about in the previous section there is to play 4 note per string scales. So again, I can just play through A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's obviously 4 notes per string, and the great thing about it is it really helps you learn how to get those position shifts working out nice and smooth, you know, as well as just learn the board better. Anybody that's ever taken lessons from me knows I'm always trying to encourage people to learn the natural notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, as well as humanly possible. Really important to learn those naturals. And whenever you just choose like the A minor scale or the C major scale, just either of them that are just the natural notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and you learn how to play that as many different ways across the board as you can, you end up learning all the natural notes on the board super well. And that's really important because if you know where the naturals are, like this A, you know where A flat and A sharp are as well. So you end up just kind of learning the sharps and flats without even learning them, you know? Who dat? So you could just kind of take a 4 note per string journey here and start off on any note and see if you can work your way around it in a 4 note per string fashion. Maybe if you start on F, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. It's a pretty good way to do it. Another way I really like to practice 4 note per string stuff is to use this sort of simplified pattern of those alt 6s that I was talking about, applied to a 3 note per string scale. Let's use that A major scale pattern again. Instead of simply walking up the string 1 note at a time, which would give us 3 notes in a row, I like to play patterns like this to yield a total of 4 notes. Play the low note, the high note, the middle note, and then back to the high note. Okay? I'll do that again. Low, high, middle, high. The next string would sound like this. Then the D, G, B, and high E. That's also a great pattern to practice if you're trying to, you know, reel that little finger in a little bit, because considering it's every other note, that thing's got to stay close to the fretboard to make it there on time. So if you're one of those people that has a little finger that just kind of trails off if you're not using it, these patterns are really great because the little finger is just so in demand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now on the way down, we're going to reverse that order of operations. We're going to go highest note on the string to the lowest, to the middle, then back to the lowest. Although you could just as well still be playing the low, high, middle, high pattern, only descending like this. That one's got a good, you know, powdery wig, neoclassical kind of feel to it, so that's a useful one as well. And again, apply that to any other 3 note per string scale pattern you know. Maybe this B Locrian scale pattern would sound cool with that. And there's really a lot of other ways that you could still play 4 notes per string with a 3 note per string scale. Again, just mix it up and see what you can come up with. Just a second ago I was fooling around with middle, low, middle, high, you know? Sounds pretty tricky. It sounds really neat too. Again, that's something I could use in my regular phrasing while I'm improvising or maybe writing a solo or something like that. These are actual things that I would use in a musical context, so why not pursue those instead? So use that for the 4-note per string sections of the half hour of power. That's going to be sections 3 and 4. 3, you're always going to be starting with a downstroke. 4, you're always going to be starting with an upstroke. And lastly, we're left here with the terrible 2s, segments 5 and 6 of the workout. These are going to be 2-note per string patterns, so probably the most perfect thing you can work on for that is just your good old minor pentatonic scale. Everybody's favorite. It's just a nice, handy 2-note per string pattern that you can use on the guitar to practice this stuff. There's a lot of different ways that you could practice this, but I find the one that I tend to fall into the most whenever I'm practicing, first thing in the morning or whatever, is just to ascend all the way in one minor pentatonic scale. Then after I play the last note, move up a fret and descend down that minor pentatonic scale. After the last note, move up another one, and so on. It sounds something like this. Then just move up off that last note. Move up again. That was an example of randomizing where I'm ascending through here. I talked about that in the original video too. Again, you can do that with all of your different scale patterns and things. Just kind of choose a string to scoot up a fret on, move down a little bit, choose another string to ascend on, and so on. It's good to randomize it like that. That way your brain can just latch on to anything you want it to do the second that you tell it to do it, and not just get so used to going straight down and straight up through scales. But you could also get a more musically usable idea going through here, and instead of just simply ascending chromatically with the same minor pentatonic scale, move through the 5 different positions of a minor pentatonic, right? So I could start off with like a minor pentatonic, and I'm gonna ascend all the way through that. Again, 2 notes per string. After this note, what you're gonna do is move up a whole step and descend down the C major pentatonic shape like this. After that, move up to the next note in the scale, the D note right here, ascend through the 3rd position. Ascend up to the 4th position, the 5th position, then you're back at the 1st. Again, that's a really great thing that you can do to practice your alternate picking skills while also learning the board better and better and seeing how those scale pattern shapes overlap and connect with each other. Another cool idea you could do here too is to take those 3-note per string scale patterns and just cut a note off of every string, It's one of those things I used to do a lot of times, just to take something I knew and see if I could make it sound different by simply omitting some notes. So for example, maybe I take the A major scale pattern that we had earlier and maybe I cut out a few of the middle notes. So instead of playing all 3, I'm just going to play the low note and the high note for a couple strings. Maybe here on the top 2 strings, instead of playing the lowest and highest notes, maybe I play the low and middle notes. So again, I'm taking this framework and just poking holes in it, taking a note off of every string. Kind of has some cool like exotic sounds like that Hirajoshi scale or something like that. Probably some cool stuff you can come up with like harmonic minor scales or melodic minor scales and things like that. If you just take what you already have in a 3-note per string format and just cut a note out on each string. You can even practice them over a backing track or something like that in kind of a more jam and improvised based context. That'd be a really good idea. Maybe you play through with this backing track, and whenever you're on the 6s parts of the exercise, maybe that's when you practice phrasing with triplets through scales. Then whenever it gets onto sections 3 and 4, the 4-note per string stuff, maybe you try to come up with more cool 16th note based phrases, stuff like that. You might have heard there a second ago when I was playing through those 6s, I was accenting every 4th note. So what I mean is taking this phrase, but playing it over this beat. I've done a couple videos on this same subject, but I find it's always really great to take phrases that were intended for one rhythmic feel, like the sextuplets or triplets, and practice them as 16th notes or 8th notes instead. You're gonna have a lot more command over the rhythms of your playing whenever you practice that way. Plus you get the added benefit of doubling the mileage of every sequence that you know, because that phrase as triplets or sextuplets sounds and feels a lot different than it does when you play it as 8th notes or 16th notes. Kind of going back to what we were talking about with playing the sixes phrases as 4 per beat, as 16th notes, you know? Also find that it's good to do the opposite here and practice the 4 note per string stuff as triplets. So if I had that 3 note per string 4 bass pattern that we talked about a second ago, it's pretty natural to feel that as 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and but I recommend also setting your metronome to triplets and trying to practice it that way. Triplet, triplet. Again, it's a drastically different sound to play that as triplets than it is as 16th notes, because where the phrase starts doesn't really line up with the downbeat all that well. You know, sometimes the downbeat falls like on the last note on a string, but it's like every 3 strings, I guess it is, you end up falling back onto a downbeat again. So it's got a really cool kind of sound to it where it sounds like it's kind of drifting away and then meeting back up with the downbeat, and then they drift off and meet up again. Really cool thing you can do with your phrasing. See what all ways you guys can come up with to phrase your favorite scales in 6, 4, and 2 note per string patterns. And I would love to see what you guys come up with. So if you come up with anything that you think sounds really cool, be sure to post it on the Patreon page and interact with your fellow patrons. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thanks as always for helping support me here over on my Patreon page. It really means more to me than you guys know, so thank you very much. Well guys, I've got a jet. It's time to take that dog on a good long walk, and I suggest you guys get away from the computer and get to work. Get some melodic shredding going on in your practice routine. You can become a mega picker and a mega melody maker all at once now. So get after it. Less clicking, more picking.